Roj Bash, Dan Bash, und Ivar Bash, and hello, good evening, good morning to all of you, to all the participants. And my name is Marwan Sheikho. I'm currently in the second year of my master's program in Kurdish Studies at Zahra Institute. I'm very honored and pleased to introduce our today's speaker, Dr. Michael Chyet. And Dr. Michael Chyet has recently retired from his position as, or actually last year retired from his position as cataloger of Middle Eastern languages and at the Library of Congress. Formerly, he was a senior broadcast editor of the Kurdish service of the Voice of America and professor of Kurdish at the University of Paris and at the Washington Kurdish Institute. Dr. Chyet has also a PhD in Middle Eastern folklore and in Middle Eastern languages for UC Berkeley. And he is currently teaching Kurdish via Zoom for Missouri State University. The second edition of Dr. Chyet's Kurdish English Dictionary, Ferhenga Birûskî, appeared in January 2020, and he is currently working on a third expanded edition. He has also published several articles on Kurdish and Middle Eastern folklore and about Kurdish linguistics. Folklore genres of particular interest to him include riddles, proverbs, folk tales, and romances. And now I would like to give Dr. Chyet the floor to start his presentation. Thank you very much.
B'khair Hatan. Welcome, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, well, if you want to pronounce my name correctly, just remember Chyet, you'll like it. So I'm going to share my screen. The title of my talk is Breakthroughs in Kurdish Lexicography. These are a couple of topics that I have been working, over the last couple of years, I've made some discoveries that I'm excited about, and I just thought it would be nice to share them with you. So this is a preview of coming attractions. Does everyone see this picture here? I'll be discussing later on what it is and what it isn't. So let's get started with this. So breakthroughs in Kurdish lexicography. The first topic, I have long been aware of the fact that there are two ways to say wet and dry in Kurdish. And recently I gave some thought as to what the distinction is between them, both for myself and as a professor teaching. So I came up with an idea and I bounced it off of several native speakers, and apparently I'm on to something. So the two pairs are ter and hishk, and shil and zawa. So ter and shil both mean wet, hishk and zawa both mean dry, but they're not interchangeable. So if we think of water as having both life-promoting and destructive qualities, each of these pairs can be pinned to one of those qualities. So first of all, life-promoting, another way of seeing this is nature, natural. So ter, with its Persian cognate tar, means hydrated, well-watered, moist, full of the fluids necessary to support and sustain life, and by extension, fresh, young, new, tender, succulent. And its opposite, hishk, with its Persian cognate khushk, means dry, arid, parched, desiccated, bone-dry, sere, withered, lifeless, lacking in life-sustaining fluids, and by extension, tight, firm, hard, tough, and shrill of sound. So my folklore professor at UC Berkeley, Alan Dundas, has this wonderful article called Wet and Dry, the Evil Eye, an essay in Indo-European and Semitic worldview, in which he discusses these things. And just one sentence from there, life depends upon liquid. Liquid means life, while loss of liquid means death. wet and dry as an oppositional pair means life and death. Liquids are living, dry is dying. So this is life promoting. This is the ter and hishk are the natural side. Then we have shil and zawa, the destructive side, and this refers to man-made things, whereas ter and hishk tend to refer to things in nature, such as trees and plants and grass and things like that. Shil and zawa are applied to man-made things. So I'm going to start with zawa. Dry, the normal state of most things on land, denoting an absence of water. Free from wetness or moisture, normally having no moisture. So your clothes, for instance, or the walls of your house are normally dry. That's zawa. But then if they get wet, if they become shil, that is not a good thing. If clothing, paper, walls, and floorboards, etc., get wet, they will become moldy and rot, particularly unless dried promptly. So this is, shil is undesirable, ter is desirable. So by extension, the word for a clothes dryer in Kurmanji is zawa ker, so something that makes something zawa. Hishk ker would be, I don't know if you've seen those. A cousin of mine has this contraption where you can take slices of apples, for instance, and dry them. That would be hishker. That's not the same as zawaker. And also, ironically, the word shili means precipitation and rain, and it's used in some regions. Okay. So in Zazaki, we find parallels to this, both sets in Kurmanji. Tern and wishk for the first set, and he, or in der simhit, and zwa. So he and heat are the equivalent of shil in Kurmanji. So Central Kurdish, which in Sorani is now not the preferable term for this. Central Kurdish has the distinction for wet. So ter and khusau, the verb khusan, to become wet or drenched, exists. But for dry, I'm only aware of wushk. Also in Persian, we have the same distinction for wet, tar and khis. Khis looks and is probably cognate with Sorani khusan, though khis is an adjective and khusan is a full verb. But for dry, I'm only aware of khushk. Now, if anybody is aware of words in Central Kurdish and in Persian that would be the equivalent of zawa, please let me know. Up till now, I am not aware, and people I've asked have not been able to come up with another word for dry. So similar distinctions in other languages. So in Arabic, there are several words for dry. There's the root yabasa, cognate with Hebrew yavesh, which seems to be comparable to Kurmanji zawa or zaha in meaning, perhaps also nashif. Then there's the word jafaf, jaf, which corresponds roughly to hishk. And that's for the dry. For the wet, balla, to be wet. Mablul is the simple word for wet in Arabic. But there's also the root tariya or tariwa, to be fresh, succulent, moist, tender, soft. The Hebrew word tari also means fresh. Then Turkish has two words for wet, ıslak, which seems more or less to correspond to shil, and yash, which is supposedly where the word yeshil, green, comes from. And it also means age. Kach yashin dasin, how old are you? Rather like the annual adding of a ring to each tree after the wet season. Also, yash can mean tears, those shed while crying, also called göz yaşı in Turkish. And then for dry, there's kuru, the basic word for dry, but there's also kurak, meaning rainless. So Jafaf and Kurak and Hishk seem to be more or less in the same ballpark. Now, Latin also distinguishes two words for dry, siccus and sudus. So siccus, according to my dictionary, is dry, dried out, dried up, rainless, snowless, without precipitation, thirsty, and figuratively solid, firm, vigorous, sober, temperate, abstemious, cold, unresponsive, and bare, dry, dull, tasteless of style, also ill-prepared. So it can have some negative connotations. Whereas sudus is dry, free of moisture, of weather, clear, bright, cloudless, sunny. So this would suggest that siccus roughly corresponds to hishk, and sudus roughly corresponds to ziwa. But apparently sudus and hishk are from the same Proto-Indo-European root, which I will look at in what's coming up. So I'm trying to look at these from all different angles. So, whoops, damn it. So here is an example from folklore. There is a game similar to heads or tails in which usually a boy takes a small flat stone, tevshtus in various regions, and spits on one side of it, then calls out to his friend, Tashilon za, to you wet or dry, and throws it up in the air. The friend calls either shil or za, and the winner is determined by whichever side lands facing up. So notice there, it's not ted and hishk, it's shil and za, zwa. Also, there's a riddle, dekeva ave shil nabe. It falls into the water, but it doesn't get wet. Anybody know what that is? You give up? Okay. See, a shadow. A shadow falls on the water and doesn't get wet. So here are some examples of usage taken largely from dictionaries. Labayin hishk terji de shawitin. Beside the dry, the wet also burn. That's a proverb. Deste terbe. So this is an expression that I collected from an informant from Hazo, Kozluk. A greeting said to anyone who does something for you, for instance, serves you tea. Literally, may your hand be fresh. This has parallels in other Middle Eastern languages, Turkish, eline salik, Arabic, sallim idek, Persian, dastet dar nakone. Hekehun daran avnedin, de hishk bibin. If you don't water the trees, they will dry up. And another expression, which I collected from a friend from Kızıltepe, from Koser, binewi shile. Literally means his bottom is wet, but it means he has skeletons in his closet. He has a dark past, has secrets that he doesn't want people to know about. And here's some more examples. We krase yeshil dena bertavi. He laid out his wet shirt in the sun. Baran bari am shildeben. When it rains, we get wet. Jilk libertave zahabun. The clothes dried in the sun. We jilk leber agiri zahakarin. He dried the clothes in front of the fire. So you see that shil and zaha or zawahir are used with man-made things, with clothes, for instance. Okay. So etymology. Where for all four of these words, I can provide some etymological information. So hishk, the Proto-Indo-European root, which Pokorny has as saus or sus, and also susko. We have Persian choshk, Latin sudus, and also Russian sukhoi is from the same root. Then ter, Pokorny's third root, ter, teru, and treo. To rub, turn, pierce. So he lists Sanskrit taruna, meaning young or tender, and Avestan tauruna, also meaning young. Now, the Zaza form that I mentioned before, tern, also has that N. And then in Middle Persian, tar, A doubled R often means that it was previously a rana cluster and the nerve got swallowed up. So tar with a doubled R. And in modern Persian tar, wet, moist, fresh, green. So shil, there is an Avestan form khushudra, meaning liquid. But normally it's a rda cluster that becomes a la. Here it's a dra rather than rada cluster. So there must have been some place where people were saying khshurda instead of khshudra. But my professor, Martin Schwartz, actually suggested that it could come from khshudra. So if it's kosher for him, it's kosher for me. And Middle Persian from that has a form shusar, meaning liquid or fluid, and also semen. And then zawa or zaha, again, my professor Martin Schwartz has two possible etymologies. One, you compare it with Middle Persian or Parthian wizau, meaning to fade, wither, droop, to die of plants, and also possibly uzwata. So that's the preverb uz plus the root wa, meaning to blow. So dried out by the wind would be the idea there. So I think I'm ready to go on to my second subject here. Yes. So khilbelik. In Margaret Kahn's book, Children of the Jinn, she mentions khilbeliks. Here is the passage that it comes from. Zippers and safety pins might be thought of as ugly in the West, but the safety pin is more than a functional object in Kurdistan. Safety pins, I later discovered, are quite useful for warding off khilbeliks, those evil Kurdish spirits that appear at sundown in the guise of real people and wreak havoc on their victims. So I have been looking for independent confirmation of the word khilbelik for years. When I was still working at the Library of Congress a couple of years ago, I was cataloging a dictionary of imaginary creatures and monsters in Turkish folklore. The book's called Türk Canavarları Sözlüğü. And I came across a creature called hıbılık, which is supposedly similar to al karısı, a crimson hag, which victimizes mothers who have recently given birth and which is immobilized when a needle is stuck in its collar. So that sounds similar to what Margaret was talking about. And then in the Turkish Derleme Sözlüğü, which I will be speaking about shortly, I found hıbılık or hibilik in various Kurdish regions, Kemaliye, Erzincan, Ain Elazığ, Arapkir, Malatya, and Gürün, Sivas, meaning a ghost, specter, nightmare. In the original Turkish definition, hayalet or kabus. Now, in Central Kurdish, there's also a belief in a similar creature with a different name, Chyet. So here's a brief description of Chyet, which I translated myself. The Chyet is a jinn-like and devil-like woman without religion and barren. She is childless, and consequently she does not like women with religion, or does not like religious women to have children. Every time a woman gives birth, the Chyet appears that night. There's a pun here. The Chyet appears el Chyet that night. If she finds the opportunity, she will take the child and squeeze it to death. For this reason, they put a pack needle, garlic and onions, a bow and arrow of qamish, reed, around the child, and this continues for 7 days. The child must be guarded day and night, and this is called hautei mandal, the child's sevenses. And for 40 days, the scales and dirt of the mother's womb, perhaps the placenta is meant by that, remain around the crown of the child's head. This is because the Chyet is nauseated by this mother's womb filth, and therefore she will not approach the child. In addition, they surround the child and the new mother with needles, knives, scissors, and reshke, a net-like goat hair sack for carrying straw, to frighten the Chyet. So lots of sharp objects are appear here as well. So on to my next topic. I had mentioned the Der le Messerslieu. Because of the dearth of lexicographical sources to check for independent confirmation of the accuracy of lexical items, one has to be inventive. The Turkish Derleme Sözlüğü purports to show how rich the Turkish language is. However, there are a fair amount of Kurdish words in it. Is it really plausible that ov could mean water in a Turkish dialect? Looks like the Kurdish word av to me. However, particularly when I come across a Kurdish word to add to my dictionary, for which there are few entries in the published Kurdish dictionaries, I've taken to checking the Derleme Sözlüğü. Sometimes I find something valuable, sometimes not. In the case of kımıl, which appears as kımıl, since they don't use the letter K, I hit the jackpot. One of the most valuable assets of this dictionary is the inclusion of the geographical location in which the word was collected. So the geographical spread of kımıl is very helpful. Look at all these Kurdish places. Diyarbakır, Çemişgezek in Tunceli, Birecik in Urfa, Nizip in Gaziantep, and Maraş. Musa Anter wrote a well-known story titled Kımıl in Turkish and Kımıl in Kurdish. He was from Zevinge near Nusaybin in Mardin province, so it is fair to add Mardin to the geographical extent of this word. So here is what kımıl, the entry for kımıl looks like in my dictionary. But if you look down about 5 lines from the bottom, you see CF kımıl, Diyarbakır, Çemişgezek. Well, it's a winged, odorous insect resembling a bedbug, which has a taste for wheat. So here are some more examples of things that I've found entries for in the Derleme Sözlüğü for Kurdish words. Boran, meaning a domestic pigeon, which appears in Diyarbakır and in Elazığ. I was reading an article about the Boran Khana, the dovecotes in the Diyarbakır province. So there's a nice match there. Borak, the sacrifice of an animal during Eid al-Adha, Greater Bayram. They have Borak for Varto Mush. Horik, a pair of oxen in a plowing team, which is from an Armenian word. Horik, meaning the last pair of oxen in a plowing team. And it appears in the Derleme Sözlüğü as Hörük from Kars province. Kore, from the same article as the Boran article, bird droppings or excrement used as fertilizer. It appears in the Derleme Sözlüğü as Kora. And there are several other examples here as well. So, next topic, the Male or Malinj. So in July of 2019, I attended a Kurdish conference in Chicago where I met a budding young Kurdologist named Fakhri from a village in the province of Diyarbakır. He made me aware of some Kurdish words that I hadn't known before. So my dictionary, the second edition of my dictionary was just about to come out, and here he was telling me words that I had missed. So here's an example of the gems which Fakhri has shared with me. So the word for a trowel is melle, as in his pronunciation. In the dictionaries, I found male, malinj, mole, malo. And in Central Kurdish, it appears as mala and also malinj. In Persian, it is mala, which has been borrowed into Turkish as mala, for instance, seva malası. The word exists in Arabic as well, malaj, which makes me suspect that it is one of the Arabic words borrowed from Middle Persian, which has a final aj, preserving the original ug. So in Middle Persian, then it would have been malag, but in modern Persian, that became mala. So other examples of this Middle Persian ag that is preserved in Arabic but lost in Persian follow. So babunaj in Arabic, chamomile, in Persian babune, but for Middle Persian bawonag. Banafsaj, meaning violet, Persian banafsheh, from Middle Persian wanafshag. Barnamaj in Arabic, Persian barnameh, from Middle Persian barnamag. Savage in Arabic, meaning simple or naive, Persian sada, from Middle Persian sadag. Tazaj or tazij, meaning fresh in Arabic, from Persian taza, Middle Persian tazag. The form taza also exists in Arabic, possibly borrowed from Turkish taza. Again, Turkish taza goes back to Persian taza as well. And unmudaj, namudaj, numudaj, meaning an example, Middle Persian namudag. So, after consulting with my professor Martin Schwartz, we can posit that Arabic malaj comes from an unattested Middle Persian form malag, meaning a trowel, from the root mal, and this is an example of that la coming from an original RD cluster, from mard, from Proto-Iranian marz, referring to wiping, swiping, sweeping, and swooping movements. The Persian word dastmal, meaning a handkerchief, exhibits the same root. Dast, meaning hand, plus the mal root, meaning to wipe. Other examples of the combination al from earlier ard can be seen in Persian, which we see in Persian mal, can be found in the word sal, year, from Old Persian thard, avest and sarad, and Middle Persian alag, half or side, from Old Iranian arda, avest and arada, and these are cognate with Kurmanji ali and la and Central Kurdish la. So the Kurdish verb to sweep is also from this root. Kurmanji malishtin or mishtin, with the present stem demalim, mal, and Central Kurdish malin. In Haurami, there's also a cognate in malai, meaning to rub. So the variant forms of malinj in Kurmanji and malunj in Sorani, Central Kurdish, merit special consideration. It appears that this ending inj is from the Arabic form malaj. If this is correct, then the original Iranian form malag was preserved in Arabic as malaj, while becoming shortened to mala in modern Persian and Kurdish. Then, in turn, the Arabic derivative for malaj was borrowed back into Kurdish as malinj and malinj. So if this hypothesis is to be taken seriously, it would be helpful to find other examples of words ending in aj becoming inj. And there are, in fact, instances of this phenomenon. For example, Arabic siyaj, meaning a fence or a hedge, gives us Kurmanji sanj. Arabic taj, meaning a crown, Kurmanji taj, but you also have the dialect form tanj. Arabic daraja, a step or degree. In Kurmanji, we have derenj, derenje, derinje. Possibly the Arabic word sajiya, meaning nature or character, yielding Kurmanji sinji, ethics, morals, akhlaq. The Persian word amaj, meaning target or goal, we have Kurmanji armanj, which inserts both a ra and a na. The Kurmanji word tirej, meaning a ray or a sunbeam, Central Kurdish tishk, has such dialect forms as tiranj and tiranj. And the Kurmanji word ajalok, a traditional Kurdish baby walker, which has the variant form anjilok. So that brings us to back to that picture at the beginning. Oh, well, it will in a minute. So this is my tentative dictionary entry that I have so far for this word mala, a plasterer's trowel, with some sample sentences. So now, what is this? Evchia. When I first saw it, I thought it looked like a British cricket wicket. But anybody familiar with traditional Kurdish life may look at it and know immediately what it is, which I did not. And what it actually is this is how Kurdish children learn to walk. They hold on to the bars, and you see the three wheels. They learn to walk with this. So I feel very chastened that I didn't know what it was. So I'm making up for it by adding to my dictionary three major words that I have researched. It's got several names. One is ajalok, which I just mentioned has the variant form engilok. Another is girgirok, and a third is salilank. Now, each one of these has some variants. So girgirok, you'll also come across girenek, girgirik, girgirik, girgironek, and girik. And salilank also has the forms salilanik, sililang, and salilank, that's the same. And in Central Kurdish, raurawa. So in Turkish, it's called a yürüteç, which looks to me like a yeni Türkçe, like a newly coined word. And in Persian, it's something like ravravak, similar to Surani raurawa. So that's all, folks.
Okay, thank you very much for this presentation, Dr. Chyet, for this journey actually. So it was very informative. Every slide had like many pieces of information. So thank you very much. So now I'll open the floor for the Q&A session. And anybody would like to raise a question?
Dr. Chyet, I'm just curious to know how many pages you think the third edition of your dictionary will come to.
Well, the second edition is 2 volumes, and so far I have to check. I forget how many pages I'm working on right now. Just a minute. I can tell you fairly quickly.
They seem to be very big pages in your first edition. I think that's the only edition I've seen.
Oh, the second edition is a vast improvement on the first. So I have 229 pages of stuff that I'm working on so far. But ironically, thanks to COVID, I'm in closer contact with Kurds than I ever was before. And so I'm hoping that the dictionary will be an even more accurate reflection of the living language, thanks to that. There are all of these programs that you can watch on YouTube. And if I have a question about a word, I have several people who I can email or text. So the second edition is a vast improvement on the first, but the third edition will be even better, I'm hoping. Now that I'm retired, I have time to work on it, and it's a labor of love. I enjoy it. Instead of just lying in bed, I get up every day and I can't wait to go, putter around and add some words. So this morning already, I've already added something. Actually, thanks to your email about fingernail, I updated my entry on Nanook with many variants, including Ninook.
Yeah.
But thank you for bringing that to my attention.
I have a
For your
quick,
question, Jeremy.
yeah. Thank you, Michael. That was very interesting stuff. It made me think about it as well. I think ter and heshk are for organic things.
Yeah.
And things that have life in them. So their dryness and wetness is of generative nature. And shil and zua are for objects, things happen to them externally. So that can be a surface, human body, organic thing too. Destim is zua, but destim is terra. You see, my hand is dry, but it is alive. I wonder, so that's already known. I just thought this formulation will help you. I have a question. If your dictionary has birelk in it,
I've added it recently.
okay, because that's a type of creature you come across. Again, it's some kind of fairy, and can be arrested only through some sharp object or whatever, that kind of thing. An interesting story from my childhood. I had some dryness of skin issue behind my ear when I was kid, and I remember my mother took me to some neighborhood where there was a family, and they had some special skill. Apparently their spit was medicine in the absence of better uh, healthcare system. And so you pay them a quarter or a coin or something, and they will spit on it or something, and then they do something, whatever. So how did they acquire that skill was interesting and relevant here. So they apparently, their grandfather caught a pirelk in some in the barn like place, Acher or somewhere, and so he kind of used that, what is that thing in the, hey,
A
what is
fork.
that
A
fork
fork.
like thing, anyway,
Pitchfork.
pitchfork. Okay, so he catches her and she says, if you let me, I will give you a power that will be curing people. And so and spits into his mouth apparently. So something like that. So it's a perfect mythological thing, helps people feel better. My ear got better, so it apparently works. So pirak is a category that's relevant. I thought this is be of curiosity for people. Thank you again.
Thank you. So a pitchfork, melheb is one word for it, and there are a couple other words, but that's the one that comes to mind without my looking in the dictionary. I see Jafer's comment about bering, another word in Central Kurdish for dry. Very, very interesting. Thank you. Brusk Seliman Keremke.
Yes, okay. My name is like your dictionary's name, Ferhenga Birûskî. But actually, I write without just brusque. Thanks, it was very interesting, actually. Actually, you have mentioned to the Turkish, which was like surprising for me, that Turkish is a rich language. And it reminded me a book I have read about languages. I speak more or less 9 languages, but not fluent in all languages. And the author said that there is no poor language and rich language, because even if it's like poor language, this can borrow words from other languages. In case of Kurdish, so it has a lot of synonyms, Many will look at it as a very rich language. Some will say, but it is just the same word. I mean, it's different from one place to another. I feel that, I mean, Kurds are very afraid in keeping Arabic, even Turkish words, and they are more open to borrow like Latin words. Something like I find it, yeah, not so logical. And some languages like Persian, when I read, there are a lot of Arabic words or similar to Arab, but it seems that those who write in Persian, they don't bother too much. But in case of Ottoman, when they became Turkish, they have also got rid of many Arabic words and Persian. So I feel that Kurds and Turks feel that is better to keep Kurdish. So I mean, in case of Turkish and Latin words, and Kurds also Kurdish and Latin, and taken away from Arabic. I don't know how do you look in this case. Do you think it's good to get away from Arabic words and use Latin words? And something else, again, to the richness and poor. Before the states, I mean, the de facto autonomous states in Rojava, so Kurds wanted to open the Kurdish schools, and there was a part of people say Kurdish is not a language for schools. It is like poor comparing to Arabic, which is a wow, it's amazing. But Kurdish could be. But in case of Kurdish, I mean, is it something like we Kurdish should, I mean, like the Zamanzan, I don't know how to say it, should do like embracing Arabic? I think Kurdish can get benefits from Arabic by opening the door for Arabic. Uh, so how do you find the level of Kurdish, both Kurmanji and Sorani, or maybe particularly Kurmanji, since yeah, Sorani has more like a good history in using it. So how do you find also Kurdish? Is it rich language like you said, like Turkish, or is it a poor language, or is there poor and rich language? Thank you.
Poor and rich language is a subjective issue. It's not something that can be objectively measured the way I see it. Kurmanji, well, first of all, in the West, the languages of education historically were Latin and ancient Greek.
Mhm.
So all of the languages of Europe have, particularly for scientific terms and biology and whatever, all of these are either from Greek or from Latin. A lot of people in the West can't tell them apart, which is unfortunate.
Mm.
But the parallel to that in the Middle East is Arabic and Persian. The languages of education, of scholarship for centuries were Arabic and Persian. So the names of certain diseases and things like that are Arabic. Now you can make up a word, but will people understand it? If you to explain it, you're going to have to use the Arabic or the Persian word. I can give you an example from Turkish. When I was, it would have been in 1985. I went to spend the summer in Turkey. That's actually the summer that I started to study Kurmanji. But before that, I had just arrived in Istanbul, and I bought this little book, Kıssas-ı Enbiya, the stories of the prophets in Turkish. And I'm reading along, and it has this word yalvaç. I didn't know what yalvaç was. I only had a little dictionary, and it didn't have the word in it. So I was staying at a youth hostel in Istanbul, and I asked the people working there what a yalvaç was. Nobody had any idea. I later found out that Yalvaç was an Öztürkçe word to replace peygamber, meaning prophet, Prophet, not Fit. So my point is, this was a pure Turkish word that nobody understood. So in order to explain what it is, they had to use the Persian word peygamber. So the point of language is to communicate. So if you're using words that you think are pure but that nobody understands, then you're not communicating. So there are words of Arabic origin that everybody knows in Kurdish, and but there are also times when there's a perfectly good Kurdish word, and there may also be an Arabic word. I'm more comfortable using the Kurdish word myself, but since Kurds use both, I feel that it is my responsibility to put both in my dictionary, because I can't judge what Kurds are using is what Kurds are using. I have to the dictionary. My dictionary is supposed to be an accurate mirror reflection of that usage. So I can add comments. I will certainly add the etymology as something comes from an Arabic word, then I'll give that. But there also is the interesting phenomenon of words of Arabic origin, but they have a new meaning in Kurdish, which didn't exist in the original Arabic. So it is a uniquely Kurdish use of something that may have been originally an Arabic word. So right now on the spot, I cannot think of an example of that, but there are lots and lots of such things. My apologies for not being, I'll listen to this later and I'll say, well, why didn't you say? Right now, a word doesn't come to my mind, but there are many, many words like that. There are also words, for instance, that in Turkish and in Persian are of Arabic origin, but they're not the word that is used in modern Arabic. For instance, to encourage, teşvik etmek and teşvik kardan. So tashwiq exists in Arabic, but it doesn't mean encouragement, certainly not in modern Arabic. They would say tashjia, shajja, yashajja is to encourage. But so that those are words from Arabic, but they're not used in modern Arabic. A native speaker of Arabic, they hear tashwiq, you still have to explain to them what it means. Seyir kirdin, John? Well, that's a nice example. Yeah. So seyir etmek in Turkish and seyir kirdin in Central Kurdish both mean to watch something, but it comes from the Arabic sara yasiru, which means to go, to travel. It doesn't mean to look at. And parallel to that also is temashe kirin, temasha kardan. Both it comes from another Arabic word tamasha, which means in Arabic to walk, but in temasha kardan in Persian and temasha kirin in Kurmanji don't mean to walk. They mean to watch. You're both seyir etmek and temasha kirin. They're both. You're sitting there watching as something walks in front of you, or something. I mean, you're sitting passively watching some action go on in front of you, and that's how the connection that I can see. But that's a good example of a word that is clearly from Arabic, but the meaning has changed. It's not used that way in Arabic. Tamasha in Arabic, which is the fifth form, is to walk. But temasha in Persian, the sixth form, doesn't actually exist much in Arabic. It's
Thank you.
That's an issue of Arabic. But anyway, I hope I've at least partially answered your question. So
I guess Dr. Sheikh al-Islami would like to raise a question or would like to point out something. So
please do.
Hi, Michael. Thank
Hi,
you.
Jafar.
Sorry, I'll try. I'll try to speak. One thing about what Bruce said, if I may add, yes, language purification does exist, as Michael knows, in many, many, many languages, including Persian, by the way. Language purification has existed in Persian at least for the past 100 years, at least since the establishment of the Persian Academy of Language and Literature. In fact, that's one of its missions, and they spend millions each year on this mission, actually, to coin words and to come up with new neologism. But many of them don't work. Many have worked. Like, for example, for computer, they came up with Rayane, but it never took off. And there are many more.
Vijagi and Khususi.
Yeah, a lot. So some of them are coined, some of them are brought back from Old Persian. So many languages go through this, but minoritized languages, threatened languages, tend to do more so simply because they're threatened. It's like any other part of life. When you're threatened, then you try to preserve yourself, and even to the point of exaggeration. However, among the Kurds, it's different. It depends where you are. If in Turkey, for example, the sensitivity is towards Turkish, which makes perfect sense because that's the immediate other. That's the other. But in Iran, it's Persian. So Iranian Kurds are more sensitive to Persian words. For example, sometimes they use Arabic words like zacht. Often I see it in writing of Iranian Kurds, zacht. They don't realize it's not Kurdish. It's used by Iraqi Kurds, but it's Arabic. But they prefer that over fshar, which is Persian. So it's this tendency. The late Amir Hassanpour had a nice anecdote. He said he was a young man and he goes to visit Hemin Mukriani, the late national Kurdish poet from the Republic time, Qazi Muhammad Republic time. And Hemin apparently gives them an advice. He says, try to use pure Kurdish words, avoid Persian and other words. For example, remember that verse that I have at the end of Bahari Kurdistan, the spring of Kurdistan, a very long poem by him. And he says, listen to this, boys. When I say, him and lesser khoba, nachi bichi bo hoba, bishik tashkeni toba, agar degri waksoba. And he said, Hammond finished, and then I whispered, I said, Mama Star, both Hoba and Soba are Turkish. He said, no way. I said, yes way. I'm sorry, they're Turkish. So Hammond didn't realize they were Turkish, but as long as they were not Persian, he thought they were great to use. So this tendency does exist. But it depends where. In Iraqi Kurdish, in Bashuri Kurdistan, that the sensitivity is towards Arabic, and they're very okay with using Persian all the time. It's fine. You hear Persian music, you hear Persian concerts everywhere. So that exists. The other thing, I had a question for Michael. Michael, uh, it's quite common with your work, with many, many other people's work. Usually Persian is a point of reference when it comes to literature. Like, for example, if somebody talks about Malay Jaziri, then they invoke Hafiz. And even I have heard some people say the Kurdish Hafiz is Malay Jaziri or this and that, or Nizami. The Persian Nizami is Ahmadi Khani for Kurds and things like this. And I notice you also keep making references to Persian, like when you say wushk, and then you say in Persian it's khushk. And some Iranian Kurds, I should say that, they're very sensitive to that. And their question is, why that should be the case, why the Persian always should be the point of reference. Isn't it kind of alluding to the idea of Persian nationalists that say Kurdish is a dialect of Persian? I mean, if it was a point of just invoking another Iranian language, why not Pashto? Why not Baluchi? Why not Lori? Why not Talishi? Why not other language? Why just Persian? Why it has become the center of making reference to something to establish your point about Kurdish. But it's not about Persian, the discussion. It's about Kurdish. Why Persian keeps getting invoked? Just I have, you know me, I personally I have no sensitivity to any language whatsoever. It's just something that I hear among especially the Iranian Kurds, that there is this sensitivity that they say when you talk about Kurdish, you don't have to invoke Persian. What's the point? In fact, in this audience, I think many people don't know Persian anyway. And that's why actually I asked you this question today. If it was among Iranians, that would be a different story. You would say, well, it's the standard language, it's the official language, it's, the language of Hafiz and Sadi and all that. But why here? Just curiosity. Thank you. Sorry, that was a bit long.
Why not Mamustea? I mean, sorry to interject, but I, I mean, why not? I mean, Persian is a major language. It's a reference point. There is nothing wrong. I mean, to ask this question, I think, is more nationalistic, and it's I don't know. That's my personal opinion. I wanted to say something. The main thing I wanted to say. So, Michael, you give your answer, but the idea, the desire for purification of language is not only a matter of languages under threat. Um, maybe we can make the case that maybe Persian is under the threat of Arabic, for millennia, maybe, so many years. But that's again a nationalistic fiction. Every language is influenced by every other language, and it is the moment of self-awareness in languages that creates the recognition that there are influences, and the desire for purification is a kind of artificial intervention. It's trying to regulate something that is flowing in its kind of natural course. Obviously, there is subalternity and various other forms of influences, but none of that is new, and none of that has to do with the language, being under threat in the sense that it's a new situation. Or I think what is new is not the threat; it is the self-awareness of the language. And purifying Kurdish, we see it in Turkish, for example. It's you disable yourself from understanding your ancestors to make it visible to the nationalistic kind of imagination. It's a quite a loss for that particular ethnicity or group, whether it is Persian, Turkish, Kurdish, or Arabic, and for the humanity overall. Sorry, I felt the urge to say this. Yeah, thank you.
So was there a question I was supposed to answer?
Farsi related stuff.
Well, so I always include Persian because Kurdish and Persian are closely related, and it's the other Iranian language that I know reasonably well. Pashto and Baluchi I don't really know. But I also, Turkish and Arabic and Persian are the three, traditionally, the three major Islamic languages of the Middle East. And because I know the three of them, I generally refer to them. But for Arabic, since it's related to Hebrew and Aramaic, both of which I know some of, I always refer them back and forth. I'm comparative. And the same way with Turkish and Azerbaijani and Uzbek I mean, the ones that I know, I'm comparative with them. So for me, it's just natural to give information for Persian when it's relevant to what I'm talking about in Kurdish. For instance, it's not just in Kurdish that we have ditin, to see, with a different present stem, bin, mibinam, debinam, but that's also true in Persian, didan, mibinam. I mean, it's shared. So for one thing, Persian is a widely known language in some circles, but also because of the parallels that I see, and sometimes Central Kurdish is closer or share something with Persian, and sometimes instead Kurmanji does, and then sometimes neither one of them does, but Zaza does. For instance, the simple way to say to drink in Zaza, shimeno, is Persian ashamidan. I mean, that's flowery Persian, but it's the same word. And to hear ashnaweno in Zaza, shanidan, present stem mishnavam, it's the same word. That doesn't exist in Kurmanji, but you do have particularly in Ardalani, in southern central Kurdish dialects, Jniftin and Jnutin, which is, I mean, that word is, I think I discussed that word in the last talk I gave here at Zahra. But anyway, I always give, in my dictionary too, I always give comparative notes for, well, particularly for the Iranian languages. When possible, I give Old Persian and Avestan and Middle Persian and Modern Persian, and then when possible, Central Kurdish or Sorani and Zaza and even Haurami when possible. But Persian is important for that because it's the only Iranian language for which we have ancient, middle, and modern texts. It's the only Iranian language for which we can be comparative in all three periods of the language. So that's very often, sometimes Kurdish preserves a word from Middle Persian that disappeared in modern Persian. For instance, the word jar, meaning time, one time. Jar exists in Middle Persian, but in modern Persian it was replaced by bar. So, I mean, it's relevant for historical linguistic purposes, at least. As far as this, I'm looking at Jeffrey's comment about mirafiq. I know the word marahid, meaning bathroom, which is the root arahadas, cognate with the Hebrew word rachatz, which is to wash. But mirafiq, I'm not familiar with that. It's used in Iraq. Okay, I'll have to do some research on it. But it's, for me, marfaq is an elbow, Hebrew marpek, but meaning facility or amenity. Okay, that's my new word for the day. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine how living in Iraq, that it's the kind of thing you want to get right because you don't want to make a fool of yourself in delicate life situations, But I remember my frustration at just not being able to find that word. The little bit I shared there was actually just ChatGPT managed to provide some clarity on that. But yeah, anyway. It's strange in Wiki Ferheng, which has 1 million pages overall, and that doesn't seem to exist in the dictionary.
Well, I have to say that for the most important Sorani English, Central Kurdish English Dictionary, Shafiq Kazaz's Shahrazur, the one that is most readily available, there are a lot of Arabic words which are commonly used, which are absent from it. I've started making a list of them at the back. The most salient one, for instance, Israhat Kirdin, to take a rest. It's not in there. I mean, now what is a student who's learning the language supposed to do? The student doesn't know what words are from Arabic. And if you're so to expect them to look the word up in an Arabic dictionary, and istirahat also is not the same form as Arabic istiraha anyway. It's doing a disservice to people by not including words just because of where they come from. I mean, istirahat is not the Arabic form. Istiraha is the Arabic form. But it's got a uniquely Kurdish form, and it's very widespread, and it belongs in a dictionary of that language. So I make a point of having words like that in my dictionary because I think of the user, of what they might come across and what they're gonna need, and I try to provide it whenever possible with sources. I am not a source. I'm not a native speaker of this language. So I have to have sources, native sources, for everything that I claim in my dictionary. I mean, the way I arrange the material, that's me. But the actual sources, I don't put anything in there that I have not found in either in a dictionary or in a source. And dictionaries also are prone to errors. So I'm bound and determined not to give new life to old errors whenever possible. Anyway.
So Jeremy has another question. He said that how much progress is being made in Kurmanji standardization of spelling? So
well, I think it depends on who you ask. First of all, Kurmanji today is written mostly in two alphabets, the Latin alphabet and in the Arabic alphabet. The Cyrillic alphabet seems to have given way since 1989 to the Latin alphabet. But what I think is very important, and I mean this is another talk that I give and would be happy to give here, is the simple one-on-one correspondence between the Latin and the Arabic orthography. And that means that all of the sounds that are represented that exist need to be represented. So that means ha is distinct from ha, ra is distinct from kha, a is distinct from and all of them are written in the Arabic script. And there are ways to write them in the Latin script, which were originally proposed by the Bedr Khans and which were embraced by the Soviet Kurdologists such as Kurdoyev and Bakayev and Orbeli, and which I use and which I teach and which the Library of Congress transliteration system for Kurdish uses. And I'm to be blamed for that if it's something to be blamed for. I'm proud of it, and I'm glad that I use it. But some people seem to think that ha and a and ra are only Arabic sounds and should not be used in Kurdish. But the fact is that they're regional sounds. I have walked down the street in Diyarbakir and in Urfa, and I've heard people say Arabaya bin and Rahat Sizlanma. The a and ha sounds exist in the Turkish, in the Kurdish, in the Neo-Aramaic or Syriac, and I'm told even in the Armenian dialect spoken in the region. So it's a regional thing, and it's a very Kurdish thing to have. Sometimes even words which are of Iranian origin, like the word for cloud, awr. The cognate is Persian abr, but awr has an a in it, which is not originally in the Iranian, ancient Iranian languages, but it's certainly used today. Now, my professor thinks that when you have a ra, an r, a ra sound, that tends to attract an a. And words such as awr and also the word ground, earth, from Arabic ard, which is ard in Kurmanji, and it exists as arz also in Central Kurdish, if I'm not mistaken. It would be examples of that. There's a ra in the word, and it has attracted an a, where we know it was not in the original, because the Arabic word ard, cognate with Hebrew eretz, is a hamza, an aleph, not an ayn. but the Kurdish stamp that he got made it Ard. So I see Mahsoon and Allah are two people who have their hands raised.
So
So
basically, our last two speakers or participants that they are going to raise their questions.
Okay.
So,
Hi.
Can I say something?
Mahsoon Keremke.
There was someone. If you want to go first.
Oh, why don't you go first?
It is
Mahsoon?
Okay. So sorry, mine was just a comment on previously asked question about when comparing, Kurdish or working on Kurdish language, why you bring up, anyone working on comparison of languages, why you bring up Persian or Turkish. As a Kurd from Bakur, perhaps it's partly because of my nationalist desires, obsession with Kurdish, which I think it's important because undergoing this kind of assimilation, it's important to talk about language, but it is mostly about a methodological and epistemological question of asking why, when comparing Kurdish or any languages, bringing different colonial languages, for example, talking about the Kurmanji in Bakur and bringing in comparison the Turkish, whether we borrow any words or phrases from Turkish or not. Of course, it's a language. As an anthropologist, linguistic anthropologist, I know why and how its historical processes are affecting each other. But still, I think it's a valid question, epistemologically mostly, not only methodologically. You explained that maybe it is because of the ability or inability or skills of the researcher himself or herself. But still, the question stands there, whether it's because this kind of comparative works has impact on people and leading perhaps in a conclusion to create a hierarchy between languages, unfortunately. So maybe it's again, to repeat myself, it's my nationalist obsession, but I think it's important epistemologically reading about this kind of issues when bringing the colonialist languages or colonial and colonized languages into comparison. Thank you.
So there was no question there for me.
No question. It was just my obsession with the question. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
thank you very much, Mahsoon.
Can I say something?
Allah, yeah.
Allah?
Okay. Hello,
Yes,
hello
Allah.
everyone. Yeah,
Then-
thank you so much. Spas. I just was to speak about the purity of the Kurdish language. I think there is no language 100% purity, especially the Kurdish, because the people of Kurdish, it is divided like between many countries. So each people in each country affected by this country. Like we are in Syria, we have many vocabulary in our Kurdish language affected by the Arabic of Syria. The people in Kurdish part, it is the same. In Iraq, in Iran, it is the same. So I think it was 100% purity. And it is the same for the sounds. When you are now speak about the sounds here in Syria, if somebody, his name is Muhammad, we call it Muhammad. In Turkey, they don't call him Muhammad. They say Mehmet. They don't pronounce the letter. They pronounce it like European one. Yeah. And for this reason, and also many conditions for the like a Kurdish language, because also it was forbidden for many years. I think it doesn't work on it like a one language. Now, sometimes we face it many difficulties when we speak to another country, maybe in KRG, in Turkey or Iran. We cannot understand to each other 100%. Maybe in the same country in Syria, when you move from one city to another, it's also difficult. Until now, there isn't like one language, like unit language.
Standard.
Standard. It is still need to work on it. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, Allah. I guess we've come to an end to our speak. Thank you very much, Dr. Chyet, for this presentation again, and thanks for the participants. Yes.
Can I
Thank
say
you.
something?
Johnny,
Yes.
you're muted. You're muted. Unmute yourself.
What about now?
Now I can hear you.
Okay. What I would like to say, Kurdish language is very rich because we have 4 dialects. Beside the 4 dialects, we have sub-dialect. For any linguist, he must or he has to learn the other dialect in order to work in the Kurdish language. The pure Kurdish, we would find it in the countryside, in the villages. In the 70s, there was an effort by Dr. Kamal Musser and Sadek Bahadin to purify the language. And they were saying, first we have to look within the 4 dialects. If we cannot find it, we go to Persian, Dari, Pashto, Urdu. And if not, we go to Sanskrit. If it's not in Sanskrit, then we go to Latin. So Islam and Quran had a very bad and a very negative effect in the Kurdish language. That's why we are affected by the boundaries that has been created within Kurdistan. In the past, we didn't have media, but thanks for the Kurdish media, especially in the 90s when Met TV was born, went all over Kurdistan. They used all the Kurdish dialects. So the truth is, sometimes I think the linguists, they are lazy to work for the right Kurdish words. I think we can't find for any Arabic a Kurdish word. Almost 20 years ago, Kayhan is an Iranian newspaper. They were trying, some Iranian nationalists, to purify the Kurdish language. So they were bringing in front of any Arabic within Persian, they put a Kurdish word that we use it. And then in the future, they say, hey, this is Persian. So I think we have to force ourselves and we have to work hard to work in the language. If there is a word that you could replace the Arabic word or any other foreign words, we should do so. Thank you.
I just want to say there are actually 5. Kurmanji, Central Kurdish or Sorani, Kalhuri, which I think you're forgetting, Haurami, and Zazaki. So Kalhuri is Southern Kurdish. It's 5.
Yeah, I didn't. I said dialect, but I know. I speak Kalhuri, I speak Luri, I speak Laki. Besides, I speak Turani. I understand Kurmanji. So I have full knowledge of the Kurdish language.
Of course.
I speak Arabic, I speak Persian, I speak Spanish. So, I have all these things.
Uh-huh. That's
Okay,
good to see
thank you very much, Johnny. Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
Dr. Chyet, for presentation again, and thanks for the participants for joining.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks.
Best to all of you.
Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you.